like you don't have it in this building, but usually every building must have like this room. They must say room number one. Then they must say square meters. How many square meters? Maybe from there to there can be about 7 meters. From there to there can be about 6 meters. So 7 times 6 is 7 times 6, 49. No, 42. 7 times 7 is 49. So that's 42 square meters there. No? So every country has got a square meter on the side of the country. Now, okay, Bella won't be able to see this now. Maybe can you see this? You
No,
can't.
Stephen.
All right. Okay, this is just a map of Europe. You know, it's Europe and the Middle East, and I'm just going to show them the size of the area. How big was Babylon? How big was Persia? How big was um, the Greeks? And how big was the Romans? Okay? So, all right. Okay. You can see on the top, I've got like a green, the Assyrian Empire. I don't know if you can check the um, the green line there. It will include Egypt. No? Assyria will include Egypt, and it will go. I think it just comes from what is this now? And the present now is like Kuwait, not Kuwait, Iraq, and but it doesn't include Iran. That's if you look at that map. But anyway, as you can see, the green here, Egypt, and it's short there, and it comes back. And the what do you call it? Israel is just here. Okay, I'll just mark it thicker there. That is where Israel is. So that is where the Assyrians, you can see that is the Assyrians took Israel into captivity, and they spread them throughout the whole world. Okay, the Jews went. That is why the Bible would say, "I'll gather them from the ends of the earth," because Syria took the Jews and he spread them all over the world. But then came Babylon. Now you can see Babylon is brown. Now Babylon on its height, also you can see it includes Egypt and it goes around here, but also it swallows up Assyria. Let's put it like that. It swallows up Assyria and it comes up to the bottom of Turkey, and that is now Babylon. You can see there, that is now Babylon. Then the Medo-Persian swallowed up Babylon again. So you can see the Medo-Persian is bigger. You can see the blue line, and it's going further towards India. You see the blue line there, and it takes more of Turkey. Then you have the Greeks, and you can see that by the pink line. Remember, this here is where Greek is, or Greece. So they moved from here over to this way. But you can see also they occupied Egypt, but in fact they occupied even Libya also, right? Almost to India. Okay, maybe if you had India, you would have reached India, and you can see, and it's got Europe also. So it's a much bigger kingdom, and it also swallowed. You can actually say it swallowed up the Assyrian kingdom. It swallowed up the Babylonian kingdom. It swallowed up the Medo-Persian kingdom. So it must be stronger. Okay. Now the Roman Empire, you can see that one is in black, and remember Rome is here, where the Vatican is here by Italy. That is where the Romans are. And they start moving around, and you can see they even include the British Isles. No? British England here, it includes Spain, Portugal, France, all the way north of Africa, that's Morocco and Algiers and so right through, and it's swallowing up the Greek kingdom. All right? It's even swallowing up the Greek kingdom. So that is what the known world was in the time of the intertestamental period, even in the time when Jesus walked the earth. This is the known world. They didn't know about America. They didn't know about Africa. They didn't know. Africa is not, it's Egypt, the top here, that they knew. Even by the New Testament, they knew about Ethiopia also, but they didn't know further down. I mean, we learned at school about Vasco da Gama and Bartholomew Dias, and they came to find the Cape of Good Hope and so on. So that was in the 1600s and the 1500s, even when they went to Columbus, went to America and South America, that was in the 1500s. So they did, but when they got there, there was people. But those people weren't religious, like worshipping the one God concept. They were worshipping more than one God. They were they were just nature worshippers. Like India worship a cow. There in maybe in South America, they were worshipping the sun and so on. You see? So the an idea that I want to bring to you, this was the kingdom border in the time of the intertestamental period. Now, remember, what's his name? Nebuchadnezzar saw the statue, and you have Babylon, and you have the Medes and Persians, you have the Greeks, and you have the Romans in that. And this is their area. This is how big they are. But remember that there was a stone that was cut out by not with man's hand, by human hands. And it struck that statue at its feet and it crumbled it up. In other words, now that stone, which we say, became a mountain and it filled the whole earth. Now, this, if you look at that, then we can see that that area is just about here, with the English. That's the area which represents the four kingdoms. But now that stone that became a mountain and filled the whole earth, it is the church. Remember, that is another kingdom. One would have to say the fifth kingdom. But that is and it will know no end. And so that stone, that is Canada, it's there. America, it is there. South America, it is there. Africa, it is all over Africa. Madagascar, it is there. Greenland, it is there. Australia, New Zealand, even here the Philippines, and say there. Even Russia, it is there. Even China, I can say Japan, the church is there, maybe just in its minority. So can you see how big is this kingdom compared to this kingdom which is only around here? You see? So it filled the whole earth. So now you can see how God already saw that the church will be instrumental in bringing love, because many of these people, they just wanted to fight. Okay? And so, just for your concept, that this is the known world, but that stone filled the whole earth. And there's no borders. You cannot contain it in a country because it is everywhere. So that is what I wanted to just graphically show you. So in other words, this is where the stone went to. It filled the whole earth. And there was no end to it. and it is not left to another people like here. The Syrians was left to the Babylonians. The Babylonians was left to the Persians. The Persians was left to the Greeks. The Greeks was left to the Romans, and there it stopped. Then God took over. It was not left because everybody is now. It's not a Roman church. It's not a German church. Not a South African church. It is the church of Christ. It's the church which God, Christ bought with his own blood, and it adheres to all his instructions. And as I said, the Roman Catholic Church is guilty of destroying the true word of God because they wanted to rule the world, continue ruling the world. Okay? So that is just one point that I wanted to bring over to you guys tonight. Right. Now, we're going again to the little horn, and this time we're going to the horn of the Third Empire. We have the little horn of the Fourth Empire. All right? So, as they say, I've been listening to a lot of to fill up myself and to see if I'm on the right track. And I can see I am on the right track. It's only that my intention is that you also need to be on the right track concerning the period between Malachi and the New Testament Matthew. All right. So, number one, don't get confused with the little horns, because there's two horns, two little horns. Where's my picture? Where's this? Because this is all information, or it's all history. Actually, it is not inspired history like biblically. It is written by human because every country takes notes. They must, even when people go to war, you'll find that there is the people that take notes. They write, this happened today, this happened today. That after the war, they have correspondence which they can give to all the people. Even that is why I'm just giving you an example. When Scott, I don't know what this is, it is about Scott that wanted to get to the South Pole. He died. If he could just hold out a little bit longer, he could have reached the South Pole. But he died before he reached it. But they got what? A book, a notebook by all of them has got a diary in which they write down everything they do. So in that time, that 400 years, people every day they dictated what took place, and it's written up. It's not in our Bible, but it is there. All right. Um, we are now by the little horn in the third kingdom. Again, remember, there's two little horns. The one is in the fourth kingdom. Now, the fourth kingdom, how is the fourth kingdom described? If I have to ask you three, how is the fourth kingdom described? There's two manners how the fourth kingdom is described.
Terrifying beast. God in form. Deformed.
I hear you talking about beast, right? It's good. No form, or it's how can one show it? The way it is said, it's like a dangerous kind of animal. It's a beast. It's not just an animal, it's a beast. As the other one, okay, that is the one example. The other example, this one is from Daniel. Daniel had the vision, and he dreamed in the night, and he saw these four animals coming out of the earth: the lion, the bear, the leopard, and this undescribable beast. What was the other one?
The little horns, isn't it coming from this beast?
Yeah, but I'm asking you now to describe to me there's four kingdoms. They are the Romans, but how do you uh, 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 just give me an example? Right? When Daniel was interpreting Nebuchadnezzar's dream, he also had the fourth kingdom was the Romans, okay, of legs. Now, why we can say the Romans, it is because there was the Babylonians, there was the Medo-Persians, there was the Greeks, and logic follows, the Romans took over. So when you look at that statue, then Daniel said, you, O king, is the head of gold, and after you, an inferior one will come. It's strange that he says an inferior one. You think an inferior one, but it is in the value. One is gold, and one is a top line kingdom. But the kingdoms all became inferior because God was going to replace them all with one that is everlasting. There's at a time limit to them. But okay, I just say gold, silver, bronze, and then iron. So the Romans would answer that. So Daniel had his vision, and then he saw a lion with wings, and then he stand on his 2 feet like a man, and then he saw the bear, but the one leg was high and the one leg was short because Medo-Persia, the meat was weaker than the Persian. Okay, so to give you that imbalance there. And then he said there was the leopard with four heads, but it had four sets of wings also to say how fast it could. Well, the leopards, the lion's wing broke off to say it failed. But anyway, the third kingdom is a leopard, but there are four heads, already indicating four rulers. And it is Alexander's four generals. The one is again, one got the north, the one got Greek, the one got Syria, and the one got Edom. All right? So uh, that is the third. The fourth is the terrible beast or the legs of iron. Okay, but now and that one little horn came there because that terrible beast had 10 horns, and out of one of the not out of one of the another horn grew, but when that horn grew, he plucked out three other horns. And so that shows how supreme is the and horns is indication of rulers or kings. Okay? But this little horn had a lot to say because they say that now, but it was blasphemy. That was it. It was blasphemy. All right. So just remember 10 horns and one little horn. Now, when we get to the third kingdom, that is the leopard. But now, we see when Daniel saw in his vision, he saw the leopard at four heads. But now in Daniel chapter 8, where he saw this horn, he saw this ram. Ram had one big horn and one small horn. It was prancing this way and that way, north, south, east, and west. And when it is exercising its power. But then Alexander, the he-goat was on its way. But they said the he-goat has a prominent horn. And there was just one horn in front of him, which one ruler. And he attacked the ram. And he destroyed the ram. But then suddenly it lost its major horn. And in its place came up four horns. Now, four horns, four heads, four horns. This is the third kingdom. I mean, it's the Greeks. That's why it's different from the Romans. They are the Greeks, and they before the. So this little horn is the one out of one. In other words, here is the horn, but out of one of the horns come a mouth that speaks, or come a little horn that speaks a lot of things and challenging the sins, and is challenging, so to say, God. When we read, we're going to read that now. So remember, four, and out of one of them, out of one of the rulers, there arise a ruler that is devastating. Okay? All right, so we are down with the little horn in the third kingdom. And as I say again, it is to prepare yourself because there is people that talking about the Antichrist and all those things. Okay? Right, so the little horn, it is in verse 8 of Daniel chapter 8. Let me just get me a Bible. Daniel chapter 8 and from verse a vision of a ram and a goat. So it says in verse 8, therefore the he-goat waxed very great, and when he was strong, the great horn was broken, and for it came up four notable ones toward the four winds of heaven. So what does it say here? Okay, the little horn of the third kingdom, the he-goat become very great. He had subdued nearly the whole of the then known world. In other words, he's swallowing up Babylon and Medo-Persia, so to say. Okay? Just to give you an idea, Medo-Persia did swallow up the Babylonians. But remember, the people were still there. The Babylonian people were still there. The British Russia takes over South Africa, we will still be in South Africa. But it will be written, we are now under Russian rule, if I have to give you. So the same is, the Babylonian people were still in their country when the Medes took them over. So when the Greeks came along, the Babylonians were still in their country, the Medo-Persians were still in their country, you see? And it's just swallowing up. So when the Greeks came along, just swallowed up all those people. And the only thing that they did was everybody had to speak the Greek language. Okay, so the he-goat, he took on the whole world and he won. The great horn was broken. Alexander died at the height of his conquest when he was about 33 years age. And in its place, four prominent horns. The regal family being all dead, the five governors of provinces usurped the title of king. After Antigonus was slain at the battle of Ipsus, they were reduced to four, namely. Okay, so they say you're five. They were actually five, but it's a five with an odd number when there's only four countries left. So, if we have a duel, and so this is the guys that was left: Seleucus, Lysimachus, Ptolemy, and Cassander. So, but we are just going to be interested in the one that is Seleucus, who ruled Syria and Babylon from whom came the Seleucids, and the other one is the Ptolemy, son of Lagus, who ruled Egypt. We just can be interested in that because there is war between those two. Syria wants to rule that part of the world. Egypt wants to rule that part of the world. So, and every time they had to go through the Holy Land. All right, now verse 9 says, and out of one of them came forth a little horn which waxed exceeding great toward the south and toward the east and toward the pleasant land. Now, the pleasant land, you can think who that is. So it says in verse 9, the little horn, not to be confused with the little horn of the fourth kingdom in Daniel 7. The little horn in Daniel 7:8 comes as an independent 11th horn after 10 preceding horns. Okay, I'm just going back to the fourth kingdom. The little horn in Daniel 7:8 comes as an independent 11th horn after 10 preceding horns. The horn of Daniel 8 is not an independent fifth horn after the four previous ones, but it arises out of the four existing horns. This horn is explained in Daniel 8:23 to be a stern-faced king. And Antiochus, the fourth epiphany, is meant. Much of the fulfillment of this can be found in the book of the Maccabees 1. The horn in Daniel 7 is clearly not the same as that of the horn in Daniel chapter 8. All right? So in other words, they make a say there was 10. He came along as the 11th one, but he plucked out 3. And we saw yesterday those names that only ruled for 1 year, that means they were assassinated and taken out of the way. All right? So it is not the same horns. All right, this little horn, it grew in power to the south. Antiochus fought against Ptolemy, Philometor, and Egypt, that is the south, with more success than his predecessors. So, okay, we can see here, as I told you, there was always war between Syria and Egypt because the one wanted to dominate the other one. All right. This page here. Already he grew in power to the south, to the east, attempts to subdue Persia towards the beautiful land, tried to subdue Judah and destroy Judaism. So, okay, the beautiful land here is Israel. Verse 10, the host of heaven, the Jewish hierarchy, the staff, the priest, and the Levite. So let's see what verse 10 says. And it waxed great, even to the host of heaven, and it cast down some of the host and of the stars to the ground and stamped upon them. This is the description of heavenly people. In other words, God-fearing people. So that is just another description, as he states, the heaven, the beautiful land. When he talks about those that are in the host of heaven, that is the children of God. So he's challenging them also. Verse 11 say, yea, yes, he magnified himself even to the prince of the host, and by him the daily sacrifice was taken away, and the place of his sanctuary was cast down. So, right, the commentary here is verse 11, the prince of hosts, most likely the high priest Onias, number 3. Remember, I spoke to you, and I said one of the questions, that is the guy, he was one of the last Aaronic or descendants of Aaron to do the priestly duty. Since in setting himself up to be as great as this prince, Antiochus took away the daily sacrifice from him in 1 Maccabees 1:54-61. It is described how Antiochus had a pagan altar, the abomination that causes desolation, set up on the altar in the temple in Jerusalem, and on the 25th, Kislev, 167 before Christ, offered a pagan sacrifice on it, thus desecrating the temple. So that is what verse 11 says. Magnified himself even to the prince of the house, that is now Onias, and by him the daily sacrifice was taken. Otherwise, the Jews could not go to the temple anymore, and the place of his sanctuary was cast down. Otherwise, it was desecrated. All right, now verse 12, because of rebellion, this is described as 12, and an house was given to him against the daily sacrifice by reason of transgression, and it cast down the truth to the ground, and it practiced and prospered. So what did the commentary say? Because of rebellion. Okay, that's what it says. And the house was given him against the daily sacrifice. Maybe the King James Version would say rebellion. Is the King James Version? Yeah, it is.
Course of the rebellion. Start.
Okay. All right, so that is the maybe a different version. This is what it's going to say here. Because of rebellion. That is described in 1 Maccabees 1:11-15 and shows that the action of Antiochus were permitted by God in order to purify the Jewish nation. This was essential since the Messiah, the Son of God, could not be sent until the Jewish people could be seen to be worshippers of only one God, the God of heaven. No one could be sure which God the Messiah, no one could be sure which God the Messiah was, the son of it. The Jews practice idolatry. I don't understand this verse. This was a sense that the Messiah, the Son of God, could not be sent until the Jewish people could be seen to be worshippers of only one God, the God of heaven. No one could be sure which God the Messiah.
Because there's too many idols that they are worshipping. No?
Like this.
Because God is in a small letter like that. The idols that they worship.
So this man was allowed to carry out this kind of sacrifice as a way of trying to trigger the Jews into going back to worshiping God and not the idols that they were now like worshiping.
Yeah, because of their supremacy, the people would all speak the same language, and they would all be Hellenists, in other words, Greeks, Greek culture, everything. And but God on this point, He's using the big guy so that to draw the faith of the Jews. Are they just going to say, what, leave it alone? But it did happen that they did stand up for their rights. No? But this verse tells no one could be sure which God the Messiah was the son of it if the Jews practice idolatry. In other words, if the Jews would practice idolatry,
they wouldn't know which God the Messiah is supposed to come. Because of you mentioned this cultural execution, right?
Yeah.
That it happened. So because people are now mixed up, this guy had to provoke them into worshiping the real God. And they maintain that practice of worshiping the real God. So that the Messiah comes from people who worship the true God.
Good.
But yeah, it also says the Jews practice idolatry.
Yeah.
So idolatry is just God, but two small letters here that they are praying to.
So if they continue doing that, then no one But be sure which God, the Messiah or the Son.
The thing is this, they are very headstrong, the Jews. They don't want to worship they don't want to go back to idol worship. You see? But now they also confused now. In a way, they want to, but God is sort of keeping himself back and see what they up to. But in their own, they do their best to remain true to God. Okay, let's see. It prospered, it prospered, fruit was thrown to the ground. Antiochus was successful in overcoming the Jews and prevented them from practicing their religion, the truth, for more than 3 years. In the Maccabees, you can see, I think I did give you guys examples of the Maccabees so that you can follow me there also. All right. Verse 13 that says, the question is, how long will it take for all this to be completed? Verse 13 says, then I heard one saint speaking, and another saint said unto that certain saint which spake, how long shall be the vision concerning the daily sacrifice and the transgression of desolation, to give both the sanctuary and the house to be trodden underfoot? So verse 13 says, the question is, how long will it take for all of this to be completed? That is, how long will the daily sacrifice be taken away as the result of the desecration of the temple and the subjugation of God's people? So, remember that the Jewish people always conferred with God. Always, and now it seems that they coming back. That is why Daniel is asking, but he's asking someone standing there, and that one asked another one. So Daniel and others were all interested in this, what is happening here. Now, verse 14 says, and he said unto me, unto 2,300 days. Then shall the sanctuary be cleansed. Now the question is, how long will it take for all of this to be completed? That is, how long will the daily sacrifice be taken away of the temple and the subjugation of God? Verse 40, 2,300 evening mornings. Literally. 2,300. The end point of this period is the reconsecration of the sanctuary, allowing the resumption of the daily sacrifices. This is found to be 25 Kislev. Now that name Kislev is how, like we've got January, February, March, April. The Jews have their own names. All right? So 25 Kislev in the year 164 before Christ, in 1 Maccabees 4:52. Since the emphasis is on the daily sacrifices and since the expression evening mornings is used only here, there is good reason to believe that the 2,300 refers to the total number of sacrifices that could not be offered, since sacrifices were offered twice per day, that is in the evening and morning. This number would refer to 1,150 days, using a 360-day year. This would be 3 years and 70 days, or 3 years and 100 days if an intercalary month is added. Now, the sacrifice was taken away on an unknown date prior to 15 Kislev 167 before Christ, as is clear from the Maccabee report. The events of First Maccabee clearly took place in the same year, that is 167 before Christ, thus giving a perfect, though undated, starting point for the fulfillment of this even vision, and one that accommodates the period of 1,150 days without straining the credulity. Okay, so because it's morning, evenings, but you remember evening, mornings, twice they sacrifice every day, in the morning and in the evening. But now they have 2,300, and so the scholars divide it, and they get 1150. If you divide that by 360 days per year, then you will find you have 3 years and 70 days. Okay? So that gives you an idea. That is how long it will take before everything is over. And it remains only to show that the events in Daniel 11 refer to the time of the Roman Empire, not to that of the Greeks, nor to the second coming of Christ. Rome invaded Palestine in Daniel 11, verse 40 to 45. All right, so now, where are we now? Verse 15, and it came to pass when Daniel saw the vision and saw the meaning, then behold, there stood. All right, so the visions and everything stopped there. Okay? I just want to see here. This is what is so, if we read further, we can see how Daniel identified the countries. Okay, let's look from verse 15. And it came to pass when even I, Daniel, had seen the vision and saw the meaning, then behold, there stood before me as the appearance of a man, and I heard a man's voice between the banks of Ulai, which called and said, Gabriel, make this man to understand the vision. You see, this is the thing that today people just want to easily interpret the visions, even of Revelation, and come up with some bright idea. It's difficult. You must have the real spiritual insight into it. So he came near where I stood, and when he came, I was afraid and fell upon my face. And he said unto me, Understand, O Son of Man, for at the time of the end shall be the vision. Now, as he was speaking with me, I was in a deep sleep on my face toward the ground. But he touched me and set me upright. And he said, Behold, I will make thee know what shall be in the last end of the indignation, for at the time appointed the end shall be. Now he's explaining about the ram and the he-goat. The ram which thou sawest, having two horns, are the kings of the Medes and the Persians. You see? And the rough goat is the king of Grecia, of Greece. And the great horn that is between his eyes is the first king of Greece. Now that being broken, whereas four stood up for it, 4 kingdoms shall stand up out of the nation, but not in his power. Alexander the Great's power. Now that being broken, and in the latter time of the kingdom, when the transgressors are come to the full, a king of fierce countenance and understanding, dark sentences shall stand up. So when everything is settled down, there's going to come a king that is going to be this terrible guy. Verse 24, and his power shall be mighty, but not by his own power, and he shall destroy wonderfully and shall prosper, and practice and shall destroy the mighty and the holy people. Otherwise, he's making war against Judah or against the children of God. And though the policy also and through his policy also he shall cause craft to prosper in his land, in his hand, and he shall magnify himself in his heart, and by peace shall destroy many. He shall also stand up against the prince of princes, but he shall be broken without hand. Verse 26, and the vision of the evening and the morning which was told is true. Wherefore, shut thou up the vision, for it shall be for many days. And I, Daniel, fainted and was sick certain days. Afterwards I rose up and did the king's business, and I was astonished at the vision, but none understood it. So, this is now Antiochus Epiphanes, which is fighting the holy people. And that is that small horn that is talking so much, because it came out of, you have 1, 2, 3, 4 horns. But out of the one horn, you see that is the Syrian or the Seleucids. Out of one of them came this Antiochus Epiphanes, and he did all these things to the Jews. Let's just take the time here. Let's see if we can go and we stop early. Okay, let's go to it. It remains only to show that the events of Daniel 11 refer to the time of the Roman Empire, not to that of the Greeks, nor to the second coming of Christ. Rome invades Palestine in Daniel chapter 11. This is what the conflict between kings. Let's see, 11 verses 40. And we read in 40. And at the time of the end shall the king of the south push at him, and the king of the north shall come against him like a whirlwind with chaff. Now, this is when I spoke to you about the people of the second coming or of the rapture or of the Antichrist. I always talk about the king of the north and the king of the south. And then they would say the king of the north is Russia, but they'll never say who's the king of the south. Or the king of the north is Red China, but they'll never say who's the king of the south. You see? But that is the king of the north. Syria and Egypt is the king of the south, because they are continually battling it out. All right. The king of the north shall come against like a whirlwind, with chariots and with horsemen and with many ships, and he shall enter into the country and shall overflow and pass over. And this is Rome that is coming. He shall enter also into the glorious land, that is now the children of Israel, and many countries shall be overthrown, but these shall escape out of his hand, even Edom and Moab, and the chief of the children of Ammon. Why? Because they are on, okay, I don't have, if you have down Israel, okay? If I have a Bible here, you can see it. All right, this one don't have much of it. Let's see. Oh, I didn't use that. You see, here it is. This is now the Israel, the land, okay? But you can see Moab is on that side, Edom is on that side, and Ammon is on that side. So they don't interfere with it. They want to, this is the highway here. The highway is here, running through. So they are, they do not interfere. That is why it says here, where did I read? I read some, I lost my page. Daniel. So Daniel 11, no? 40 something. "41. And he shall enter also into the glorious land, and many countries shall be overthrown. But these shall escape out of his hand, even Edom and Moab, and the chief of the children of Ammon." As I say, you can see them, Edom, Moab, and Ammon. They are out of harm's way. You see? Because they're moving down this way. Yeah, this is the highway. All right? This is the highway to Egypt. And from Egypt back to Syria. Because remember, this is desert on this side. It's better this side than this side. All right. He shall stretch forth his hand also upon the countries, and the land of Egypt shall not escape. But he shall have power over the treasures of gold and of silver, and over all the precious things of Egypt, and the Libyans and the Ethiopians shall be at his steps. Where we are now, yeah. So 40 to 45. But tidings out of the east and out of the north shall trouble him. Therefore he shall go forth with great fury to destroy and utterly to make away many. And he shall plant the tabernacles of his palace between the seas in the glorious mountains, holy mountains. Yet he shall come to his end, and none shall help him. So as we say, as they say here, that is the Romans and that is not the Greeks. Okay? Although the scene changes abruptly to the time of the end in the context of the annual vision refers to the time of the fourth kingdom, Rome. This section is quite vague, but surely it refers to the coming of the Romans. No other army of this historical period fits the picture of might described here. The king of the north, therefore, is the Roman emperor. Verse 41 would then be describing the conquest of Palestine by Pompey in 63. Rome also was the first empire to encompass Egypt, Libya, and Ethiopia, together with the rest of the Middle East. The reports in verse 44 would refer to the Parthian invasion of the empire in 53 before Christ, in which they won a significant battle against Rome, which set the eastern frontier of the empire for some years. Verse 45 returned to the Romans' occupation of Judea and included the destruction of Jerusalem and ultimately of the Roman Empire. So now you get chapter 12, prophecy of tribulation and deliverance. Now this is where the what do you call it, is rapture people come in, because I can see here it talks about the 1 to 6 old days, and I just seen here 3.5. Where did I see it now? But I'm not going to do this now because it's confusing. And you must literally study this very well. How's it going? That is 3.5 times. Oh yeah, verse 7 says times, times, and half the time. Verse 7, if you read chapter 12, how long shall it be to the end of these wonders? And then 7 will say, and I heard a man clothed in linen, which was upon the waters of the river, when he held up his right hand and his left hand into heaven, and swear by him that liveth forever, that it shall be for a time, times, and half, and when he shall have accomplished to scatter the power of the holy people, all these things shall be finished. So this is where they said this time, times, and a half a time. So time is like 1 year, times is 2 years, and half a time is a half a year. That gives you 3.5 years. And if you now times 3.5 years with 260, 360. Oh, my brother did send me the code. Let me calculate. 3.5 times 360, 1,260. You see there? 1,260 days. So all that works out. But this is, I'm not going to bother with that now because when Jesus comes, times and times and things will not make any. All that we must do is be ready. And we can see in the time of Daniel, in the time of Jeremiah, in the time of Isaiah, they went to warn, and the people did not listen until Salamander came from or Shalmaneser from the Syrians to away Israel, and Nebuchadnezzar came and took away Judah. After 70 years, Judah came back, and I just read something just afterward. They say it's about 50,000 Jews that came back to the promised land. But it's about 2 million Jews that stayed behind. Because they had houses, they was married, some was married, they were settled. And as I said, it was only those that are zealous, they went back because they felt they had to take care of the Holy Land. You see, but most of like Daniel didn't come back, Ezra didn't come back, Esther did not come back. They all stayed down there because they were all old already. You see, but the thing what they said to me was like Iran and Iraq. They are all Jews actually, because they intermingled with the other nations. So it's actually brother against brother up there. Unless you are like those that living in Israel now at the moment. They are the zealots. That's why they call them the Zionists, because they will die for that country. You see? And there's someone who will say, no, it's fine, you can go. You go fight, I will stay here. I'll keep the pot warm. Only so I think we got one left, and I'm just gonna do revision work on Thursday evening. It's just going to be revision work because there's nothing I can teach you anymore. I don't want to go to this because then I join the wagon to say when the Lord will come.
So there's one observation I made.
Yeah.
In terms of value.
Daniel.
In terms of value.
Value.
Find that started off as golden kingdom to silver to bronze to iron. Then when you look at in terms of territory you conquered, it seems like the area keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger with every single eternal power. So at the start of the lesson, I was wondering, even that it's been referred to as decreasing in value, when in actual fact the area is increasing. And just remembered simple logic, really. it's easier to have a degree of control when you're in charge of fewer people. Then as the numbers increase, it's easier to lose control of those people as well. Because if you look at the area, some of the areas that are forming part of their territory, you have to cross oceans to get there. I'm sure if something serious actually happens in that part anyway, over the other side of the ocean, it won't be there time, won't do anything for it.
Yeah, I also had that when Daniel told Nebuchadnezzar, an inferior kingdom will take over your kingdom. And another inferior kingdom will overtake that. But then I think when you want to acknowledge someone, then you always give him the best. So when Daniel addressed Nebuchadnezzar, thou art king at the head of gold. Your kingdom is the head of gold. You are number one. So immediately you win his favor. But just imagine you were telling you, O king, is the iron. And as you go down, greater kingdoms will become. You see, he at that moment would say, no, your God is not talking in my favor. You see, but by telling him you are the head of gold, I'm the head of gold, and immediately it went to the head. One, he was filled with, and he became an animal. God made him go and graze like a cow, eat grass, till eventually he found that maybe Daniel is right. There is somebody greater than me. Then he apologized. And well, he doesn't say he worshiped God, but I think he had respect for God. You see? Because they were gods in their own right. But now, as you say, now he's the head of gold. But now, in the meantime, it got so lekker here and nice that it said that Belshazzar, remember this, Daniel's name was changed to Belshazzar. Remember? But Nebuchadnezzar's grandson was Belshazzar. He was not Belshazzar. That's Daniel. He was Belshazzar. And what did he do? At a great party. And he used even all the temple's utensils and served wine and partying with those stuff. And then there was writing on a wall. And then they had to go call Daniel. And Daniel said, well, what's written there? Your kingdom has been weighed and it's been found wanting. And the same night, while they were feasting, Darius then walked into the country and took it over. You see, so that is from just having a nice time. And they didn't even notice that Darius then was taking the water away from them. There was no water in the city. And so that is how Darius won on that same night when the writing was on the wall. All right, now Darius walks in, he's a bigger country. Remember, his soldiers is still vibrant, whereas Nebuchadnezzar's soldiers is worn down. So they took over. As I said, they swallowed them up. But now, you was told now comes a bronze country. And it's a bigger country. But it's bronze. But it's the value. Maybe God just wanted to make segments. And then eventually became the one of iron. And iron is the least of the metal pieces. And it's only the 10 toes which they now say that must be rulers. You see, although it's strange that we say horns is rulers, but now they say that 10 toes is rulers. But just to have a time limit, then it works out that the last of the kings, so to say, now when did that stone strike them? That's why they work out when the temple fell. and the Jews were all obliterated, killed up. That is when the church was born. That mountain that grew throughout the world. No more small little countries, big. So when God does things, he does it in a big way. See? So, thank you very much. Thank you, Friday, and then we can. Amakaya. This was Amakaya. And you know Zam and you?
Yeah.
Also Zam. But you know Amakaya. What does it mean? You guys know it. Let's pray. Salamat Biala. Okay, let's pray.
Thank you.
Right. Dear God and Father, we are so thankful for this hour. We're glad that we could see your wisdom, how you could control the world and make every effort so that the Messiah can be born at the right time. And so, Lord, I pray that we understand your will and we can also explain to others what happens in that 400 years when you prove to the people that God is still alive. We may not see him, we may not hear him, but we do know that he is busy dictating and preparing for the next stage. Lord, as we shall separate from one another, let us do it in love. When it's time for us to come together again, let's do it because we want to. It's in Jesus' name that I pray. Amen. Right?
Thank you.